Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Veronia, and in this video I want to talk about some of the ways you could potentially still stick to your budget even if prices are rising. Now, the reason why I wanted to make this video is because if you've been watching the news or maybe you've seen it on social media, inflation is pretty much through the roof at the moment, and it seems to be what everyone is talking about. And so what I want to do in this video is really just share some of the tips that I think you could potentially be doing when it comes to your budget, and also talk about things that we're doing with our money too. So the first tip I want to give when it comes to sticking to your budget, even if prices are rising, is to really be clear on your numbers. Now, I've decided to make this the first point because I think it is actually one of the most important things you can do, especially if things are becoming more expensive. And the reason why I say that is if you realize that prices are continuing to rise, you're going to want to be clear on the total amount that your expenses come to so that you can evaluate and ensure whether you have enough income that's going to cover all of those expenses. Now, the reason why I said knowing your numbers is going to be important is because I feel like when most people make a budget, they don't necessarily actually put the numbers into their budget, and so they're not really sure how much their expenses actually come to. Now, the reason why that could potentially be a problem is if you haven't necessarily focused on the numbers, and let's say you don't really know how much your essential bills come to, well, then it's going to be difficult to figure out how much you can put towards those expenses, especially if prices go up. So let's say that you estimate that your essential bills comes to around £2,000 or dollars a month, when in reality, if you'd have actually checked your numbers, you may find that actually you tend to spend around £2,500 or dollars a month. Well, that's going to have a huge impact on your budget overall, especially if prices do start to rise. And so if you do want to stick to your budget, then knowing your numbers is going to be very, very important, because you can then adapt with your budget if things change. So let's say that after you've done your budget and you really are clear on your numbers, your bills come to about £2,500 or dollars a month. Well, if prices then do start to rise, you at least know exactly where the changes are happening, and so you can then adjust your budget accordingly. Now, if you do want to learn a bit more about the steps you could be taking when it comes to not only budgeting your money but managing your money in general, then definitely check out my free money management guide, because what I do is talk about the steps that I took to control my money but to also grow my money as well. So make sure you do check that out if you haven't already. I will link it up here for you and in the description below. But when it comes to really knowing your numbers, especially in your budget, even though things may change, like let's say your spending category will probably change, there are some areas in your budget that probably won't change very much, like your essential bills. And so really being clear on those numbers at least will then help you to adapt and stick to your budget later on. And if you're liking this video so far, then feel free to give me a thumbs up, as it really does help to support the channel. Plus, I'm sure you know it's free. Now, the next tip I want to give when it comes to sticking to your budget, even if prices are rising, is to be realistic with those price increases. Now, what I mean by this is, let's say that you tend to spend around £80 or $80 every week on your groceries, but then because food prices have been increasing, you're pretty much spending like £100 or dollars. Well, if that's the case, a mistake that many people tend to do is still budget £80 or $80, knowing full well that the price has already increased anyway. And so the only two things you can really do is either just go over your budget or actually cut down on your groceries and limit how much you can spend. And so in my personal opinion, I think it's going to be a bit more effective actually being realistic in those numbers and knowing that even if you have to increase your budget, that's fine, rather than just kind of hoping for the best and keeping the same number, knowing full well that you'll probably go over the budget anyway. Plus, I feel like if you're more realistic with certain expenses like groceries, what you can be doing is actually looking through your whole budget and seeing if there's any potential areas where you can save money. And so even if your groceries budget is increasing and you don't want to cut down on food, if you're able to save money somewhere else, you can then use some of that money to hopefully pay for your groceries bill as well. And so from personal experience, this definitely happened to us when it came to things like groceries, and also when it came to petrol costs as well. So when it came to petrol, I think we used to spend about £90 a month, but then petrol prices started to increase and we found that we were spending more like £120. And so rather than just still sticking to the £90 budget, knowing full well that we would probably spend more anyways, what we did is actually just change the amount that we allocated to petrol, and so we stuck with £120 instead of £90. And so for the past few months, we have still been able to keep to that budget because we've now allocated £120 instead. Now, the next tip I want to give you when it comes to sticking to your budget, even if prices are rising, is to actually take the time to declutter your finances. And so what I mean by this is almost doing like a financial audit where you look through all of your expenses and take the time to evaluate whether you want to keep paying for that expense or not. And the reason why I say that is because you will be surprised at some of the things that you're potentially paying for, which really doesn't serve you any purpose. For example, you may be subscribed to 10 or 15 subscriptions when in reality you probably only use 2 or 3 of them. And so if you're able to go through your expenses and get rid of some of the things that you don't really find useful, well, obviously that means that you can then free up some cash, and you probably find that you're able to stick to your budget more if you're paying the things that you actually want to pay for. Now, if you're looking to also stick to your budget and save money at the same time, don't worry, Auntie V always has you. So I have got so many different saving videos that will potentially help you if you are looking to do that. So make sure you do check them out if you haven't already. I will link one up here for you and in the description below. But when you think about things like decluttering your house so that you can finally have space and use things that you actually want to use, the same thing will go for your finances. If there are things that you're paying for that are pretty much just useless, then it's worth just getting rid of them and freeing up some money there, because that's also probably going to help you stick to your budget too. Now, the fourth tip I want to give when it comes to sticking to your budget, even if prices are rising, is to actually consider making more money. Now, I feel like sometimes we forget about this, but actually, even if prices are rising, if you are able to make more money, well then generally what's going to happen is that you'll be able to keep the same lifestyle. Because let's say that prices are rising by about 8%. Well, if you're able to make more money that actually matches that 8% or even exceeds it, even if prices do continue to increase and things get more expensive, because you're already making more money, then you might find that your lifestyle could still be the same and you won't necessarily have to cut back. Now, of course, there are many other ways to make money. You could get a promotion at your job, you could maybe start a side hustle, you could maybe even start selling stuff. But whatever it is, if you do really want to be able to stick to your budget whilst also not having to cut back and keep that same lifestyle, then making more money could be a very, very powerful tool. Now, if you want to learn more about how you could potentially make more money and increase your income, I do have a video that talks about that in a bit more detail, so make sure you check that out if you haven't already. I will of course link it up here for you and in the description below. Now, the next tip I want to give when it comes to sticking to your budget even if prices are rising is to also consider growing your money through investing. Now, first of all, you might be asking, Auntie V, what on earth does investing have to do with sticking to your budget? Now, yes, if we're thinking about the now and the short term, potentially this probably is irrelevant. But what I'm saying is to also consider investing your money when it comes to sticking to your budget, because if you are thinking about your financial future, then actually investing your money could be very, very powerful when it comes to growing your money overall, so that even if prices do continue to increase over time, your assets will likely increase too. And so over the long term, because you're likely to get higher returns in the future, well then even if prices do continue to rise, if you're able to invest that money, you know that at least in the future you'll still be able to keep up with those prices rising, and your investments may even beat inflation too. And if you're not really sure what inflation is, it is basically when prices continue to rise and the purchasing power of your pounds or dollars continues to go down. And so essentially with the money that you have, you're actually buying less of those goods and services. So just as an example, I actually invest through the stock market, and if I look at my portfolio now, my returns are currently at about 9.2%. And so even if inflation is at like 8%, I'm still able to beat inflation because I've invested my money. Now, if you would like further support when it comes to starting to invest your money, because that can be overwhelming, or even just sticking to your budget in general, then definitely check out my one-to-one coaching program, because it's pretty much personalized to help you and your own finances. So make sure you do check that out if you haven't already. You can book a free interest call with me, so I'll link more information up here for you and in the description below. But if you do want to stick to your budget, there are obviously things that you can do within your budget, and as well as that, there are some things that you can do to actually increase your income so that you can basically still live the same lifestyle and stick to that budget overall, even if things do get more expensive. So if you did like this video, then please do give me a thumbs up if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments what else are you doing to stick to your budget during this time. I do post every Tuesday, so if you would like to know more, then of course you can subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys next Tuesday.